Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar about how to create visually attractive presentations. I'm Paulus, Perkkiö, founder and CEO of Seidat, and I'm here together with Joona Taskinen. Joona can maybe a little bit later introduce yourself a little bit more detailed. And it's really nice that you are here, and when we are waiting for the others to join this webinar, I want to invite you to follow us in our social media channels in LinkedIn and Instagram, especially because in those channels we tell you our latest news and what kind of events we are organizing next. Of course, we are sharing also many kind of ideas there, so I really recommend you to follow us in those channels. But about today's agenda, we will start going through the topic of why do visualizations make your customers buy more, and then we go more detailed to that topic, how to create those visually appealing presentations, and sharing all kind of tricks and tips what we have learned about visuality and how to use that to get better results when you are using presentations. During the whole webinar, and in the end of the webinar, I will introduce a little bit more detailed how Seidat as a platform can solve those themes what we are discussing today. During the whole webinar, we have live chat open. Evertis has already sent some links to that chat, so please use it actively, and if you have already something in your mind what you would like to get answered during this webinar, please tell that in the chat. And we are recording the webinar, so if there will be any problems, then you will get later the recording, and you can share it also to your colleagues. But Joona, maybe you introduce yourself a little bit more detailed first, and then I can continue.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Joona, the COO of Seidat and project manager as well. And I playfully added my previous title when I was working at Seidat maybe 4 years ago. I joined the team 5 years ago, and my title back then was Presentation Wizard. And that is the reason why I'm invited to this webinar now to co-host with Paulus. So I've been working for 5 years, as I said, with the customers, with hundreds of different companies, creating hundreds of different presentations for them, together with them, and also like with the graphic designers and everything. So I have a quite broad understanding of what a good presentation is, and especially what a good sales presentation is. So I'll be sharing my tips a bit later in the webinar.
Yes, and I'm Paulus, CEO and founder, and my background is actually educational background is in design. So I have studied these topics a little bit, and used those tips and tricks for more than 20 years. So it is really interesting to share our experiences in this webinar together with Joona. And welcome once again. If we start from that kind of topic, what kind of presentation I really think is very interesting, and it was the event where Steve Jobs introduced iPhone, launched it for big audience, for the global audience. And now and then I check that video about that event, how he launched it and how he used presentation to express the whole idea of iPhone. I can remember it was a huge event and there were so many people following it. And I must say that even it's many, many years ago, more than 10 years, it's still something really, it has still some really nice ideas inside that whole launch event. And of course, it's totally different type of sales pitch, what for example, I'm doing typically when I'm meeting customers. In those situations, I try to run conversation, and Steve was pitching. There were no idea, no opportunity to ask any questions. So it was not conversation like it's typically in sales meetings. And we in Seidat, we are mostly involved in sales materials, sales presentations. And if you think about the situation, why we are now discussing about how to develop visually appealing presentations, the reason is that if you think about sales and trying to get better results, what is the situation where you can raise up those results? I think that in this image we see that there is a back office work and there is front line where you are interacting with your customers. And how I feel and what is my 30 years sales experience is that you can't develop your sales results in back office, but you can do it easily in front line when you interact with your customers. And when you interact with your customers, those are that kind of situations when they do those decisions, at least unconsciously, so that they maybe don't even think about that they have made a decision, but in reality, they will do those in meetings. And what is typical problem when we meet many kind of companies is that many of them have really fragmented materials. They have really poor quality and they are not developing them too quickly. They may even miss some kind of sales concept, or at least they have not defined how they could use presentation as a part of sales concept. And they are missing sometimes even collaboration between sales and marketing people, sometimes even collaboration between inside the sales team between the members. But if you think about these things, that they have fragmented materials which are low quality, and how we see presentations from our perspective, they should be some kind of supporters for salespeople or presenters. It's like a fireside where you can join with your customers and start discussing. There must be some kind of wow effects, so it must be visually high quality. And that high quality is really important if you think about the first impression. It can be the presentation can be the first impression of the company which you are presenting. But how to make presentations on the level where they are like campfires, where people collect themselves around and start discussing about various topics. So from that point of view, there is huge difference between this kind of situation, what Steve did. It's like he was like a keynote, but typically I believe that you who are joining to this webinar and who are watching there, you are in totally different kind of situation where you try to build conversation. What is the role of the visuality in those situations? I would say that if you have really good quality of visual presentation, you can get more sales. Why this is happening? And how I would say that is that it's all about understanding. When you are explaining what you are selling, what kind of products you have, what kind of services, how the process will go. If your customer is not understanding everything, it's not that easy to buy. And if you think about images and the visual quality of the presentation, it's very narrowly connected to that same topic. And I think, for example, that images they are really great tools to stimulate thinking. And when they stimulate thinking, the person who is buying something, he is trying to think about the topic and trying to evaluate themselves, should they buy or not. And based on many kind of researches, this is a result of one research which says that why to use visual materials. If you don't use any extra content which is supporting your pitch, it means that people on average level they can understand about 10% of that message. If you can use bullet points or any kind of text which is supporting your presentation, then the level of understanding is twice as high. But if you can use some kind of visual content which is supporting you, then it's 8 times higher, the understanding. And that is the main reason why this visual quality of the presentations is very important. I want to also say that there are many kind of visuality, many ways to do that visuality. One way to build wow effects is, for example, this kind of very tiny GIF animations, northern lights in dark image. It's interesting. It can be also this kind of 360 images. So it doesn't always mean that it's only typical kind of photo or text which you try to use to visualize things. It can be also something else. And the most important thing with images is that they should build and help you to build that interaction between you and the audience. One extra point which I would like to say is that when I'm thinking about presentations in sales, I'm thinking the whole process. For example, in this image, there is steps from lead generation to contacting, first meeting, what happens after the meeting or between the meetings, then closing meeting when you present your proposal and the customer is signing the contract. I think that using presentation is possible in all of those steps. And when we are thinking about presentations, we are connecting presentation to all of those steps. I have now introduced the idea of why visuality is important, and then I can give stage to Joona, to our wizards, to tell how to do it.
Yes, thank you. So I have split the topic into few different topics. I'm going to talk about how you can use colors, how you can use images, how you can use slide layouts to create the visually attractive presentation, and then talking about the bigger picture, like how does it all come together. If we start to discuss about the use of colors, you might have the situation where your brand has already set the colors to be something, and you have little to no control over what the colors are. But typically every company, oops, now I've noticed that some of the text on this slide is still in Finnish. My apologies on that, but I'll explain it anyways. So some of the colors can be predefined, and you just have to use them as they are. But typically each company, they have primary colors. They might have one or two types of primary colors. And then typically companies have accent colors. And as the name suggests, they are typically used as accent colors and shouldn't be used in too many places or in too high of a concentration. And then typically the brand has other colors or also usable, and they typically are the colors that you would use mainly in the fonts. And these are the colors that Seidat uses. So we have the primary color of purple. And like you might have noticed in the presentation that we have some images where the purple is present, or mainly it's the background color of the slide. And the reason why we're using the lighter shade of the purple rather than the dark is to have much more calming effect on the slide. So if we would use only the really darker purple, that is our main color, it would feel a bit overwhelming at some points. And the reason why we're not using the oranges or the coral colors that much is that it's really strong color, and it's best to be used only in small concentrations. We use the accent color in some places in the text typically, or in some icons. You will see a bit later about the icons. And here you can see a bit about the contrast of the colors. So it's really important that you keep good enough contrast between the different colors that you might have on the presentation. So in this example, you have the left side where it is again this light lavender color that we use quite often. My hoodie is the same color as well. It's the company hoodie, and it's quite easy to use that sort of light color in the slides, or on the slides rather, especially when it comes to the smaller text. Then we could also use sort of the inverted colors that we have on the right side, which is the dark black, and then using white or orange text on top. But that creates a bit of a problem when it goes to the smaller end of the font. So I wouldn't recommend using that high of a contrast in that way, especially if you're presenting with a small screen, or if you're presenting sometimes with a projector, or if the screen that you're using is low quality, because it can be much harder to read the text when it's on a darker background, a light text, rather than other way around. And then about the use of colors, I would mention a few things that you should keep in mind when you're designing the presentations. One of the things that is getting more headlines and is becoming more important is accessibility. Accessibility basically means that everyone, regardless their accessibility challenges, would be able to utilize your materials or your presentations in this case. And this, you can do it well or you can do it poorly, depending on how you use your colors, for example. So if you use too little contrast, for example, on the slide, or you use too small of a text, that can cause accessibility problems. But it goes beyond than what you might be able to see, because there are different, for example, there are people with color impairment who cannot see the colors the same way I, for example, can see them. So some combinations of colors can be a bit tricky for some people to read. So it's good, and there are actually tools you can Google which help you to distinguish if it's accessibility, if the accessibility is good enough. But typically, if you give good enough contrast, you use the colors wisely, like on this slide, shouldn't be a problem. But on the right side, it might cause problems if the text is, for example, too small. Then it's maybe more about how you design your brand and how you set the colors, but it's good to keep in mind also when using the color scheme that you already have, and when you're creating the materials, to keep a good balance on the colors. What I have seen sometimes is that, for example, the accent color might be really strong, like it is in our case, and that has been used more than it should have. And it can cause the slide to be really overwhelming, or even, again, having some contrast issues with the text readability. For example, if the background is, let's say we would put the purple and then we would use the dark gray as the font color, it could cause the text to be not that well readable, and the slide wouldn't be as balanced as it might be with these kind of color usage that we have here on this slide. And then you can, of course, go a bit deeper when you're designing your brand. That does it fit your brand? Is it colorful enough? Is it too colorful, for example? What you try to communicate with the colors that you're choosing, and so on. There's plenty of books or research you can read about what different colors people associate and what they think of different colors on different brands. For example, red might be associated with cheapness, for example. And then the last thing about colors I would point out would be the usability, how well you can use the colors together with all the different colors that you might have. So you might choose two different primary colors, but they wouldn't go, for example, very well together, and that could be a problem. That you have to choose one over the other, and it would be, of course, better if they are usable together or usable with more of the accent colors that you might have. Yeah, and Paulus, do you have anything to add to the color topic?
I'm not sure if it's only connected to colors, but of course, I really think the whole brand itself. If you have a website, you have a presentations, we can tell what is working really well, but I really recommend also to follow your brand guidelines and thinking, say that way, that if your customer is, for example, visiting on your website, you are presenting them your presentation, they must have same kind of visual identity. And following that is also really important if you think about the customer journey itself.
Yeah, and I would maybe argue that the most important thing tying it all together is colors, like your brand colors. If they are the same, regardless if you would have maybe different font even in your website and presentation, that could fly without anyone knowing, or different type of images that could be unnoticed. But I think if the colors are different, then people are going to take notice because it's so big part of the look.
Yeah, and I can shortly continue that customer journey point of view is that typically people are thinking in marketing that the website itself is one of the most important thing. But in reality, your presentations, you typically tailor them to your customers, and you send them and you share your ideas how to solve their problems with those presentations. And your customers are looking them. They have at first maybe seen your website, then they see your presentation. I think the experience must go up. So your presentation should be better than your website. I think it's something what you can think about.
Yeah, good topic. Then if we go to the question of images, like you might have noticed that we use quite a lot of images on our presentations, and a lot of our customers do too. And I recommend you to use images as well. I'll show a few examples on how the image can help you to create your materials and bring it all together. So you can use, or at least I argue that you can use in many companies images that do not necessarily connect to your product, for example, or service you're doing. So in this case, this could be an image that we would use, and just adding our text with the colors could make a really good looking slide, even though we don't sell peers or dresses or anything like that. And the image is mostly to convey feeling, and yeah, so that's the point. About using different images in presentations, there are a few ways to approach. Of course, you can use any image essentially, but few ways that are better in what we've noticed with our users, for example. Here you have few example images from image banks on the top, and those images are meant to be used when you're creating presentations to utilize the image as is, and then you can place some text on top of it. I think the best example is the rightmost image with the man who has his arms crossed, because that has quite a lot of so-called dead space, which as an image wouldn't be maybe the best thing for as an image, but for a presentation use, it really creates a good space to place the text or the other content that you may have. Then on the bottom, you might have these abstract texture images that are also quite good, but you would most likely need some sort of layer on top of them to reduce the contrast a little bit, because the contrast could make it harder to read the text if you put some text on top. Maybe black text, if it's big enough, could be on top of the image, but only in really big sizes. And maybe on the leftmost image where you have the lamp, I would place the text, of course, on the left side, since the lamp actually has quite a lot of contrast, and placing text on top of that would be challenging. On the bottom of the slide, you can see a few sources where you can start gathering some images. Of course, I always recommend using your own actual images if you can, but in many cases it's maybe not feasible, at least in the beginning, or even if you have some images, they might not be really good use for presentations. They might be too full of stuff happening in the image, and then it sort of becomes too hard to use because there is no dead space, like I've discussed. Or if it's like a team image or something, it might not be the best. So We quite often turn to these sources: Shutterstock, Pexels, Unsplash. You could add a few more, like Adobe Image Bank, for example, is a great source, and there's plenty of more. Then we also use Flat Icon, which is a place where you can find different kind of icons, for example, and some light graphical stuff as well. So those are good sources for different kind of image and graphical content. And then what is becoming more important by the day is video. And we haven't shown any video actually on these presentations. I think personally we should utilize actually more videos on slide backgrounds. But one good source for videos would be Storyblocks. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but it's a place where you can license stock video, and they have a lot of video which could work as a background or part of the slide, and repeating on the background and changing again the look and the feel of the slide and the presentation as a whole. Then last thing to mention about the images, which we have already briefly discussed, is the sufficient contrast. So here is an example of what you should do on the right and what you shouldn't do on the left. So on the left side, it's, well, most likely you'll be able to read it, and it's on the borderline of being readable in most cases. But again, we might come to the same accessibility issue that we discussed earlier, that if there isn't enough contrast with the slide, it might make it a bit hard to read. Of course, if you would just place one line of title on the left top corner as black text, that could be okay. But especially if you would have smaller text on the left side, it would be a trouble. So easy way for you to improve this is just to add a color layer on the slide. Can be full color layer or half, like we have here, and having it half is a really simple way to make the slide pop. Paulus, anything to add before we move into the next topic?
I would say that this is one of the biggest problem what I see typically when I see customers' presentations, and they have images, but in the image there is too much happening, and then they try to put some text on it. In the image there is too big contrasts, so that it's not able to create any text which is easily visible. So this kind of transparent elements under the text is one easy trick to use.
Yeah. All right. Then if we continue with slide layout, so those have the previous tips about using the images, and the colors, of course, matter. But then you can really make the difference with the different kind of slide layouts. Quite typically, slides have been designed in the same way since I don't know when, but the text is on the left side and the title is on the left top corner, and then you might have a logo. It might be on the right top corner or the right bottom corner, and that has been pretty much the norm in the presentations I've seen. But I would mix it up a bit more than that to first of all to have the customer, or let the customer notice that, hey, we are actually changing slides. Of course, they can see it if the text changes and the images change and all that. But the slide layout is one simple way to shift from one topic to another. You can, of course, depending on what you are designing, if you're designing a slide, it typically is 16:9 ratio, but if you're designing something else like a brochure, it might have a different layout. So using those different ratios is typically a good way to make the presentation really stand out. And it's very easy if you just use like rectangular shapes like we have shown here. But of course, you can go much further than that. You can add different angles on the shapes. You can add different shapes, actually like rounded shapes or something like that. But you've seen few examples here, some simple slide layouts on the presentation already, and I would use different kind of layouts to convey different kind of message again. And I'm going to show you a brief picture of a slide collection that we are about to launch for every client. And here we have pretty much everything that we have discussed. We have the slide layouts. You can maybe see it a bit better on this version. You have different kind of slide layouts, and here we have actually used much more than just rectangular shapes cut down in somewhere in the middle or horizontally to really nail down the design of the slide. So there isn't any like big box of white space if there's only 2 rows of text, for example. And here the primary color, the blue, the dark blue, is accompanied by the pink. And actually there's quite a lot of usage of the pink, which I think is really great in this one, because the contrast of the background again, being the black and white, is allowing the pink to be there in that high of a quantity. But I think that's stretching it a bit. I wouldn't add any like full solid pink slides, because it doesn't really work that well if you add it even more. Then a few more things about like the bigger picture is the unity of the presentation. The previous example I showed with the black and white pictures and the really colorful pink and the more muted dark blue really ties the bigger picture together, and you can really distinguish that it's one presentation. It's not just a slide from there and slide from there, and that was designed by someone, and that was designed by marketing and all that. Of course, when you have a bigger team, bigger presentation, it can be a bit challenging to keep it in uniform shape. And this is an example image of our materials where we have different kind of slides, and this is exactly following our brand guidelines, that we use bold images, we use big text, we use the colors like I've mentioned before, and it's all coming together with different kind of graphical elements in the presentation. So you might have the same colors, you have the same fonts and all that, so it's tying it together, even though there's a big mix of different kind of slides. And some customers have asked me like, hey, how can we create the presentation? Should we only have one slide templates? And I don't recommend to you that you only have one kind of slides or 3 kinds of slides. That it's good to have a good variety of the different slides when you're designing it, because that keeps it interesting, and that also better then fits to whatever need you might have in your presentation. Here's another example of a template that you might have seen when you took Seidat into use, or if you haven't already, you can take Seidat into use. You can find some templates, and here again we have used the same colors and more maybe on the background image color scheme. It's tying it together, but the fonts, the colors, the images are coming together. And again, please, if you have any questions, I actually haven't kept the chat open, but yeah, it's only Paulus's comments. But yeah, if you have any questions about the slide design, please let me know. I'm gonna mention before we move into few examples, and then I'll let Paulus continue. I'm gonna show a few content options on how you can, in a way, make it visually more appealing, but also to bring much more content to your materials. So you can use all of these in a lot of different materials. In Seidat, these all can be used on the presentations themselves. And I'm going to quickly show you a few of these examples. So we have possibility to embed a website, for example. The idea behind that is that you can add quickly some content that you might already have on your website, and the possibility to browse it with the customer is there. In most cases, it might be better to actually create the content on the presentation itself. If you're just over and over showing the same stuff, it might be better to have it natively on the presentation. And here, of course, you can see that the website should be the same graphical look, because if it's your website and your presentation and they do not match, then that's maybe a big issue. Then it's possible to have different kind of calculators. Here you have an example of a calculator that we have created it for our own use. And again, the colors, the fonts, everything come together to really keep the message uniform. Then you may have some more maybe in the streamlining the sales process. You might have calendar embeds where the customers can book meetings on your calendar, for example, or you might have a chatbot example here, or you could have a actual chat embedded to the website. And the idea is that you can embed different kind of content you already have to really boost the presentation and make it much more appealing, and hopefully create the wow effect that will make you stand out from the competition. And then to wrap this all up, I'm going to show you a few examples on how you can create the same sort of slide in a few different ways. So I'm going to show a cover slide, which you might have on your presentations, and all of these could be viable options. So you could use any of these, and it's somewhat a taste question what you prefer and what you don't. But for us, just using a logo and a single color on the background might be a bit boring. It doesn't really use the slide that you're showing to the full extent. And to convey the story a bit better, maybe we could add, like Paulus mentioned before, the Northern Lights could be part of our story, and we could add that to the presentation and start to tell a story with the image as well. Then if we add, like what we do, we have a presentation solution. It might be a step into the better direction again, using an image where you have someone smiling there could even make the message even better. But what I think is the best solution out of all these is to bring it all together. So you have good text, you have good graphical placement, you have all these necessary elements like the logo on the page and so on. So these are all versions what could be the same slide, but again, the execution matters quite a lot, what you add to the slide and how you do it. And the next example is a slide where you could tell the same story about how your product works, for example, or any content slide. So this is the colors are inverted, but it could be the classical presentation that you have solid color again, you have some text, and that's it. Bullet points, quite boring. No one reads it, they just listen to you. It doesn't really do much than act as your list of what you need to tell. Then if you start to add the images, it becomes immediately much better. It's much more fresh, it's much more modern. Then if you change the layout a bit and you add an image which tells the same story, that you're the partner and then there's the arm arm reaching out, maybe a bit of a cliche image bank image, but anyways, this isn't the perfect slide, since the contrast in the presentation title is a bit bad when you can see the tie and the word combine. It's a bit hard to read, but of course it's so small portion that it could go like this. But I think when you start to add even more parts to the presentation, you may add some graphical elements like the round shape and like the line with the dots, for example, if that's your graphical or your graphical guidelines allow that, and then maybe adding some images or icons or something to really make them stand out, and dividing them into 3 parts makes it much more easy to go one by one, and also the customer might recognize or remember them better later when you show the same slide maybe a bit later in the presentation. So again, 3 different approaches to the same need to tell the same story, but I think it's drastically better when you go down on the on the vertical stack of the slides. I promised the previous thing is going to be the last thing I'm going to mention, but this is the last one, I promise, and then I'm letting Paulus continue. We discussed a bit about the structure, but I think it's one thing that I would like to mention again is to have the really good structure in the meetings. It says virtual on the slide, but it doesn't necessarily have to be virtual. It really doesn't matter in my opinion. But to have a good structure that you can rely when you go through the materials, you have it in uniform shape, you have all the graphical elements there. It will really help you to convey the message better, and then you can, if need be, go back and forth in the presentation, and that's one thing to make the whole event much better. But yeah, those were my takes on what really helps, how you can create your next material to be hopefully much better graphically. And Paulus, you have anything to add? That was a long talk I just kept.
Yeah, I really like this idea how to think step by step, develop those slides to be visually better and communicating better the idea what you are selling. But if you think about this whole visuality and building presentations, I want to point out one more topic what is making this whole process and whole topic very challenging. Because typically, if you think about your company, you may have people who have different kind of roles or functions. Some of those people are thinking from marketing point of view, the others from product management point of view. Third people group, they are developing the sales processes, and then there are salespeople. So all those functions, they have different kind of viewpoint for the same topic, how to sell your products and services. And if you think about that from timeline perspective, typically it happens this way, that at first there are marketing people who create some templates, maybe some company deck. Then comes product managers who will build product presentations. Then maybe some business owners will build some business verticals, for example, to building industry or accounting offices or whatever. They add after these company slides, they have added product slides, and then comes people who will add for example, industry related case stories. And there are new presentations again, new mixture of slides. And then comes salespeople, and they tailor the whole content to their customer. So typically, this content is created by several people, and it makes it a little bit hard to keep it up to date and the brand, all the slides following the brand guidelines if you don't have any good solution how to do it. And if we think about it also from that point of view, how long it takes when marketing team is updating templates, how long it will take that those salespeople are using those new templates. What I have seen, it takes at least months, sometimes even years. The shortest time frequencies are maybe some weeks. And it is a really big problem what we have tried to solve with our platform. And if you think about what is Seidat all about, Seidat is a sales presentation platform. And in our platform, you can use the whole platform during the whole life cycle of those sales materials. You can create them inside Seidat. You can use Seidat to present them. You can share those presentations using Seidat. You can analyze. We have internal analytics where you can see if your buyer is open to presentation which you send for them. And of course, this developing and managing presentation, it's very important how to keep them all following brand guidelines and how to make them so that they all are always up to date. One reason why this is possible in Seidat is that you can use those materials 24/7 with any device because everything is in cloud. The content is centralized managed and it allows you to collaborate easily with your colleagues so that when you have all your materials inside one cloud platform, you have sales decks there, you have company decks, proposals, training materials, all kind of internal communication. It is really easy to mix those materials for new purposes what you maybe have tomorrow. It's also very interesting that as Joona was presenting this slide, that there is actually a matrix structure. You can think about this so that there is a elevator pitch level, and then you can go deeper if you have that kind of discussion that the person is interested about those details. And if you combine this matrix structure together with our presenter view, for example, I'm presenting this presentation that way that I have a presenter view in other screen, and this shared presentation is on other screen. So I can use this presenter view to select those slides which I want to present just now. And if we think about our situation, what is at the moment is that we are in online meeting. Joona is in other place where I am, but we both can manage the presentation at the same time. So when Joona was presenting, he has his own presenter view on his laptop, and I'm using my own presenter view in same presentation, and we both can manage and change the slides. And it's very useful in today's sales meetings. When you share your content to your customers, we have functions that you will be notified when your customer is opening the presentation. And there is a huge difference between our notification and the notifications and metrics what you can get for email marketing, for example. Because in email systems, those servers are opening those emails, and it will show in analytics that someone has opened, but it's total bullshit. And how it works on our side, it's server-side analytics, and it's 99% it's true that if it shows that someone has opened it, it really has happened. How we are building also our platform is that it's part of the whole marketing and sales ecosystem. So you can integrate your CRM tools to automate the processes of creating tailored material for your customers, like proposals. You can integrate social media channels so that when your customer is opening your presentation, it can trigger a pixel so that you can create a remarketing for them. And you see how your team and your customers are behaving with customers with those presentations in analytics tools, what you are typically using in marketing. So you can say that it's not like a standalone solution, but it's part of the whole, it can be part of the whole ecosystem, what you have already built in your company. And we were talking about how to keep it always up to date. We have several functions for that. One is brand settings. When you update your font styles in one place, we have this kind of brand management part of our tool. When you update the font or colors, it will be updated everywhere by one click. If you update the image in Image Bank, the image will be converted to new one immediately on every presentation, on every slide. It has the same image. If you update some product information or company numbers or whatever on one slide, if it's we call them smart slides, so centralized managed slides, it will be updated to every presentation. In this A presentation, it's here, and in the B presentation, it's here. So by one click, you can update those both presentations. In our workspace, we have about 10,000 presentations, and you can imagine how quickly we can update all of them. Using of Seidat is like is very near what you have used with PowerPoint or other tools. It's we call it what we see with user interface. So what you see, what is there really. I can't remember exactly those words, but you can add images and colors and move them around and rotate them as you want them. So it's easy to use, and that's why I really recommend you to test. If you haven't tested, please go to our website, click sign up and start free trial. And if you want to discuss more detailed, go to our website, and there you can find from contact page links to our calendar, so you can book meetings together with us. Any questions? We are still here. At least I can tell that our next webinar will be about sales leadership, how to elevate your result with powerful presentation in leadership, and it will be in 5th of October. We have also Finnish version of that a little bit earlier, previous week on Thursday, and I really recommend, if you are interested about that topic, to join this webinar also. Anything to add, Joona? Have we followed our agenda?
I think we have, we're a few seconds over, but I have a question. What if the customer cannot do it themselves? What then? Where can they get help?
Then I recommend to contact us and we can help. We are not offering only the platform, but we have also design services, and Joona with his team can help you.
Yeah, I knew the answer, but I wanted you to answer it.
Yeah, but in the end, I want to thank you all and see you soon.
Thank you from my side as well. See you guys.
Thank you. Bye.